We are live from Boston pretty early in the morning. We have a very disappointing defeat on our hands. Let me see, I have to get sort of used to talking. It's a little bit early. Bear with me. I hope everybody is doing well. This was a very interesting match to watch. I think the upshot of this match has to be that Borna Coric was just on fire. I mean, there's no other way to put it. Talk to me, Fed fans. This was very hard to deal with watching Federer, but listen, immense credit must go out to the young Croatian into his first Masters 1000 final, but more importantly, playing the best tennis of his career. The best tennis of his career. He was a wall. Coric the wall. There's no other way to put that. Everything was coming back. Everything. There was no crevice or crease or tiny little hole in that wall for Federer. On a couple of occasions, we saw the beauty, the aesthetic beauty of the Pink Panther. We saw it. But for the most part, what we saw was Coric in the stratosphere, folks. This guy was unstoppable today, and it's going to be quite a match between Coric and Djokovic. Wow. Now that's going to be awesome. Hey, Cultura and Sport, how you doing? Excuse me, guys, I have my morning voice. I have had coffee. I have been screaming. Really, I've been screaming in pain. The Fed fan within me, that little homunculus that I call my Fed fan that lives within me, was screaming. Now I'm just trying to make sense of it all, but I do think it comes down to this. The Coric's first serve. They wouldn't stop coming in. I mean, it was just, there was so few and far between points at which Federer could take a shot at a Coric second. They were all coming in on the first. Coric was, again, the only way to put it is that he was totally unstoppable today, folks. Roger could not get the Roger could not get time to think. He could not find time to organize points in the first set in particular. In the second set, in fact, Roger started to come alive, and it says so much for Borna Coric, who now has beaten Federer twice in a row. And wow, even if he never wins another match in his life, he'll be able to tell his grandkids that he was able to get the better of the great Federer. And Federer was today in many ways, folks, but I think Roger was bringing some very fine play and very fine potential point construction, particularly in the second set. I'll say this again, and I've always maintained this. I love watching Roger play regardless of whether he wins. He stayed cool today. The Pink Panther stayed cool today. He didn't kind of get out of sorts. He stayed cool with the program, and that's what I enjoyed. He displayed some great tennis, and Roger, if you're out there, thank you. Some beautiful stuff today. Some beautiful stuff. But what can we say about Coric? I mean, listen. Roger was playing the entire court better than Coric, but Coric was unstoppable on the first serve, and he was unstoppable from the baseline. He was a wall. as impenetrable as the Djokovic wall, if not more so. Uh, but I do think, culture, you want to talk about Roger? Listen, I don't think it signifies any big problem in Roger's play. Let me address my own evolution of thinking here because, of course, I came out yesterday and I said, I at least posed the question, is this the resurrection of Roger? Because he looked so beautiful out there with Nishikori. I'm going to get to Coric. I will get to Coric. And I understand, particularly right now, you're saying, Aaron, don't talk about Roger. Of course, Coric needs attention. And I don't want to take any credit away from Borna Coric here, folks. He was exquisite today. Exquisite. There's no other way to put it. Well, that's a matter of opinion. You're contradicting what I'm saying, John. You're saying Coric is average in the age of Djokovic. I'm saying this could be a very interesting match tomorrow. But of course, we must recognize, take full sort of stock of the fact that Djokovic is just he's just smoking through this tournament. Roger kind of looked slow and less explosive than yesterday. I do agree. Why is one question, and the reason must be that Coric was just, he was taking all the time away from Roger. He was just dominating from the ground with the ground strokes. And again, kissing the lines, doing what he's done before to Roger. But the footwork today with Roger, I would agree, was was not up to the full capability. He wasn't sort of full throttle. He wanted to be. I mean, toward the end of the match, you could sense Roger starting to dominate. He started to adjust his play a little more in the second set. You could feel Roger just yearning, reaching for a way to start kind of constructing and dictating points. But Coric would not give him the opportunity to sort of develop those options. Everything was coming back with Coric on the other side of the court today. It was just Roger could get virtually nothing by Coric. Think of all the winners he was teeing off on against Nishikori, Roger, that is. Coric was not enabling him to do so. I don't think it was really. I don't want to conclude here that Roger was having a bad day because you have to look at those numbers with Coric. It was almost supernatural, the extent to which Coric was landing the first serves, particularly in the first set, but all throughout the match. Uh, and it was virtually supernatural in terms of the extent to which Coric just kept getting the balls back in the points where you felt like Roger was just dominating, like this is just Roger's point to lose. Well, Coric always made Roger hit another shot. And what happened was is that Roger couldn't ultimately follow through. Novak the Spartacus brutally demolished Zverev today, says John. Coric doesn't stand a chance at all in the final. Well, that's one opinion of the matter. I will be I'm going to be, listen, I'm going to be up drinking coffee, watching Coric versus Djokovic. No question about that. And if you guys will join me, maybe we'll do another live session from my bedroom. But my family's bedroom. I can't get my kids out of my bed, which is one of the problems in my life. But age is a factor, but his serve is still fine. Uh, yeah, the serve was good today. Listen, there was a clear contrast in the extent to which Federer was having to rely on a ground game behind second serves rather than just drilling the first serves in like Coric was doing just almost just flawlessly today. So, listen, much credit to Borna Coric. Of course, he is a rising star in the tennis world. Of course, he knows in particular. See, there's different chemistries with these players, and Coric just happens to be one of these guys that kind of knows, the way I've put it before is he knows how to push Roger's buttons, which actually is not quite the right way to say it. He just knows how to get under Roger's skin. And when Coric is kind of bringing his full arsenal to the court, I do think that Roger, even when Roger's playing well, and I think Roger was playing fine today. He got off to a slow start. I do think that. And of course, he lost the toss and had to serve first. Now, Roger really prefers receiving first. There's no question about that. He loves to receive. Virtually every time he wins a coin toss, he will receive. I'm not sure about the history of that, whether Roger's been doing that his entire career, but I know in the last couple of years that's been what he's done. I think it's been more than a couple of years. But he was making more errors these days. Definitely in the rallies, Roger was struggling. But again, Coric was just virtually unstoppable. Virtually unstoppable and perfect. Like I was going to tweet, I didn't tweet out this tweet, but I was going to say, there's perfection on the court today. And there was perfection. Unfortunately, it was not Roger Federer's perfection. He was near perfect at times. I would have to conclude on a couple of those points. Sparata, not an average day in the context of this year, not remotely. Federer hasn't registered truly impressive. Listen, we can debate this point. I think at the very least what we can say, to Coric's credit, as Fed fans, we can say that in the second set, Roger started to rev up a little bit more. Roger started to dictate points a little more. I was talking yesterday about the tempered forward momentum that you saw Federer executing against Nishikori. Well, each opponent is different. I think today that more of an aggressive forward momentum could have worked better for Federer from the outset. Because once Coric found his rhythm today, and Federer basically permitted Coric to find his rhythm. Once Coric found his rhythm, he just kind of got into a groove, and it was the Coric funk. Started getting funky along Coric lines, but it wasn't funky at all for Federer. Federer was just he was getting dominated. He wasn't able to dictate. It was really kind of all defense with him and Coric. The speed, one of the key stats from this match is the speed of the ground strokes. Coric was just walloping the ball and had, I think it was something close to 20 kilometers per hour more on average in his ground strokes than Federer had. Well, one of the strategies that Coric was using, without question, was just, hit to the Federer backhand. He was going to the backhand, to the backhand, to the backhand, deep, deep into the backhand. Push Federer deeper. The key to winning against Federer, particularly in the kind of form that he was exhibiting this week, where there's a lot of forward momentum, the key is to keep him back, to push him back. Federer is something of a paradox. Federer is most comfortable when he's ahead of the baseline and pushing up, inching forward, waiting for the opportunities, but Coric doesn't permit Federer to inch up. That is really one of the secrets to how Coric is able to outdo Federer, or has been able to outdo Federer now twice in a row. And of course, in the match at Indian Wells, that wasn't a pretty match for Federer. Federer won at Indian Wells against Coric. I think it was in the semifinal, but it was not a pretty match. He was, of course, not a very pretty player at Indian Wells. Yeah, I think I will. Who will win tomorrow? Let's talk about that. But I was going to say about Indian Wells is that really was the start of something different in Federer's career. Think about it for a second. Think about this for a second. Right up until that point at Indian Wells, right up until the Coric match, because the match before that was Chung at Indian Wells, and that was a beautiful match. There was a lot of Fed funk going on there. I was getting funky to Federer during that match. Well, that ended against Coric, and he did win the match, but That ended against Coric, and Coric, in a way, was a kind of canary in the coal mine with respect to Federer and the trajectory of his play over the course of the last, say, 6, 7, 8 months, right into the grass season. Through the grass season, of course, we've had some real disappointments. He's just not been able to deliver, and so now Coric, and then he sort of Coric continued to give Federer static, and prevail over Federer in at Halle, and now we've got Coric beating Federer very decisively in the Shanghai Masters, where Federer is the defending champion. Coric is into his first 1,000 level final, where he belongs. I mean, this has been part of an upward trajectory for him. But Coric, the chemistries between these players are interesting. I mean, Coric is just someone who knows how to get under Federer's skin in a way that players of a comparable ranking don't know how. The other players of a comparable ranking don't necessarily know how. Coric did have confidence with Halle, the win on the grass courts. These courts were playing pretty fast today, uh, all week, in fact. And so, again, maybe that was an indicator that I should have taken into account. With respect to my proposition yesterday that this was the resurrection of Federer. Listen, I will never apologize for having hope in Roger Federer, and there's nothing. I think you're always justified in believing in Federer because he has the ability to win these titles. Period. He's got a proven ability to win these titles. But on the other hand, I can admit this. Yet again, we have not seen a full resurrection. There may not be another resurrection at all. We saw glimpses. I do stand on that proposition. The evidence that I made my proposition on, which was the level of play, the type of play that Roger has been exhibiting this week, the that's indisputable. That speaks for itself. And I think there you had very distinct echoes of the Roger of the Australian Open in 2009, 2017, and to some extent 2018 as well. But that period, 2017 Australian Open, also going into the Sunshine Double, that period was a very special period. And I did think there were hints of that this week, particularly in the match versus Nishikori. But I was wrong ultimately to state that this was a resurrection. I don't think we've seen a full resurrection. I do think Coric, however, sorry, I'm getting a little battery problem. I'm not going to be able to stay on forever today, but I wanted to go on and talk. Not that I ever come on forever, but I have gone on for a couple of hours before. I'm probably going to have to cut this one fairly short. But what I'll say is this. Maybe I'm going to hold my tongue. I think I'm going to hold my tongue on the idea of a resurrection. I think Federer is capable of a resurrection. And I do think today was, in a way, an exceptional circumstance. I think today was an exceptional circumstance. I think the exceptional circumstance was that Borna Coric was playing tremendous tennis. It was almost supernatural. The first serves, the defense from the ground. He was a wall with virtually no cracks in it. Federer could not find any lines in to the Coric serve and any lines into a winner, really, against the Coric defense, the Coric seamless baseline play. So there is an immense amount of credit and congratulations must give to Coric here. An immense congratulations to Roger Federer for reaching the semifinal, for playing some great tennis this week. An immense thank you to Roger Federer for giving us some beautiful tennis this week. I love watching Roger, whether he wins or not. And I will continue to believe that he can win until the moment he retires. When he retires, that it's over for him. That is when I'll stop believing. Until that moment in time, I will continue to believe, and I'll continue to marvel and enjoy the beautiful tennis that he produces. He was much more. He was a much more beautiful player on the court today than Coric. Coric, however, was on balance the much better player, the much more accurate player, the much more dependable player, and the player that I think was ultimately successful in constructing points in a way that essentially stumped Roger Federer. Listen, Federer could find no lines in, no weaknesses, no Achilles heels. Coric was impenetrable. He was perfect. There was perfection on the court today, but unfortunately for Fed fans, it was not coming from Roger Federer. It was coming from Borna Coric. So, in conclusion, let's say a little bit about this final tomorrow. The first thing is that I would love to go on live tomorrow after the match and do something like this. And of course, we will not be talking about Federer at all yesterday. We won't be talking about Federer at all. Well, we may make a few relevant references to Federer if we have to, but we are going to be focusing on the two best players in this tournament, Borna Coric and Novak Djokovic. Listen, I think this smart money is on the proctologist, who I've been calling the proctologist, the surgeon, whatever we want to call him. Djokovic is dominating. He came through Zverev in such a convincing way and has been playing, just sailing through this tournament. The question remains, and a couple of you have said something to this effect, are we entering in? I raised the question yesterday of whether Roger was having a second resurrection, but the question is, are we entering into a second age of Djokovic? And that's a question I've raised before. I love Fed. I love Federer, and we talk about Federer a lot at Tennis Talk Daily, but we also talk about Djokovic. We also talk about the genius of Novak Djokovic. Yes, the elastic hyena is out in full form, Cultura. But we have discussed the genius of Djokovic. And I will continue to discuss the genius of Djokovic. And it is a subtle genius that he brings to the court. I've referred to it in terms of neutralization. I've referred to it using a number of concepts, but I want to keep searching for the right way to understand just why the Serbinator can just flatten out the competition like he does and plow right to the finals and lift these trophies. Because you know what? The smart money, folks, is on Djokovic tomorrow. The smart money, for a couple of reasons. One, the Spartacus, fine. I want to have lots of names for these players. I'm not confined to one. I do like to keep it in the feline category for Federer because I think he's such a cat. And he was very cat-like today. But with Djokovic, we're experimenting with a number of names. He's very clinical. The surgeon. I like the proctologist, which is kind of funny in a way, but it's akin to what he does. He violates people without the people even knowing what's happening. Before they can understand what has happened, Djokovic has essentially violated them like a proctologist. I think it's kind of funny, but we love Djokovic. My prediction is that Djokovic will prevail. And, well, the Pink Panther is part of the feline metaphor, so it's consistent with Federer as the killer cat, the real cat on the tour right now, and he does move around the court like a cat. The movement was suffering a little bit today, I will concede, but I don't want to make any rash conclusions about the match today. I know that I will stand on this. Coric was virtually perfect. He was virtually impenetrable. Roger struggled in the first set, but in the second set began to construct points in some very effective ways. It's just that Coric kept articulating very compelling answers. Time and time again, the Coric wall was there. The ball was coming back. Federer was playing fairly well again once the match kind of got moving and he got revved up a little bit, but Coric was just too much. So congratulations to Coric. Look forward very much to watching more of Borna Coric. I love him. I love what he brings to the court. But for now, all eyes are on Djokovic versus Coric. My soft prediction would be Djokovic. I don't think Coric can. He probably won't be able to sustain it. But I will say this. If Coric can bring what he brought today against Federer, against Djokovic tomorrow, we're going to have a very interesting match. And Coric could end up lifting this trophy, folks. But here's what we know in terms of the rankings. Novak Djokovic has usurped Roger Federer as the world number 2. Roger Federer now, for the first time in a while, he's not either 1 or 2. He is the number 3, the world number 3. I believe that's the case. Yes, it would be the world number 3 because Delpo and Zverev haven't had much movement. In fact, they probably suffered a loss. So my sense is, I'll have to look at the numbers. My sense is Roger's pretty comfortable at number 3. But thank you guys for joining me. And it's been great to talk. We'll try to do something along these lines tomorrow after the final. And it's going to be a great final. I've appreciated all your comments. Let's hang in there for the Fed fans. Keep the faith, okay? But remember, our love for tennis transcends Federer. And there's some great players on the horizon that are coming up. We've got Medvedev. There is Tsitsipas. But now we're looking at Coric as someone who could be a potential Grand Slam winner. And the way he was playing today was a pleasure to watch. And again, congratulations to Borna Coric. He deserves it. He played perfect today. He essentially robbed Federer of the ability to display perfection. And maybe that's the most appropriate way to put it. God bless Roger Federer. He is the greatest of all time, even if he doesn't win another tennis match in his career. And he is a pleasure to watch even when he does not win. So thank you for coming out onto the court each time you do, Roger. It was truly great tennis today, Cultura, and that's not just about Roger. It was truly great tennis from both players. We love the game. We love the competition. We love the dynamics of this particular game and the history of it and how far we've come. We love all the great players, the great winners of the game. And ultimately, I'm a fan of the best player on the court most times. Now, there are some exceptions. Sometimes when the temperament or the personality of a player that's winning is sort of rubs me the wrong way, then I can, take exception to that rule. But it's the best player on the court that I love to praise and I love to talk about, and I love to try to discover just the ways in which these players can pull out these wins, which often come down to a point or two. Now, today, it didn't come down to a point or two at all. This was one of those matches that was a very clean win for Coric. I'm going to have to try to make sense of it a little more as I look at the numbers. But let me say that it's been a true pleasure to have you guys. I'm just getting some great comments. I think that we're just these little congregations we have are awesome. We don't love all the players. Okay, LSB, well, I'm trying to bring us together. We don't love all the players, again, but that's for separate reasons. I mean, listen, I love the great players. Ultimately, I do love the one-handed backhand. I have preferences, but my preference generally is for the winner. And there are exceptions for people like Nick Kyrgios, for people who have personalities that are problematic for me. Yes, there is the stylistic argument, LSB, and I know, listen, you're kind of preaching to the choir there. I do know about the style, and I fully agree with many of the stylistic arguments with respect to Federer, and that is why I just said he's the greatest of all time, regardless, and it's an ironic proposition that he's the greatest of all time right now, regardless of whether he wins another match in his life, and regardless of whether he wins. In a way, Coric was the best player on the court today, But Roger was still the greatest player of all time on the court today. That's a distinction I think we have to make, and I think Roger held his own in a way as the GOAT, even as he lost the match today. Listen, we can reflect philosophically on this forever. It was a very enjoyable match to watch in a way for just to watch Coric work was just kind of blowing my hair back. Well, maybe enjoyable is not the right word. I've got some Fed fans who are scrutinizing my words right now. Well, I will apologize at the outset or at the conclusion of it for probably not finding all the right words because I'm still a little tired. But let me say, enjoyable was probably not the right word. It was not an enjoyable match to watch because I have that little homunculus within me. That's the Federer fan. It was a little painful to watch. It was disappointing to watch in a way, but it was a little soul destroying, and me, it's that little man inside of me that's a Federer fan. I try to do some objective commentary here, and I love all the players, but I do have that Fed fan inside of me, and he was hurting. He was really, or maybe it's a she. I'm not sure. We'll have to figure that out. But that part of it was a painful, kind of soul crushing event. But listen, let me just say a final word on this, and we won't be talking at length about Federer tomorrow, so come on for the live stream tomorrow. We're going to be talking about Djokovic and Coric exclusively. But listen, champions rise and fall. Now, Federer has already risen and resurrected himself, or emerged as a champion twice in his career. He had an amazing comeback in the last couple of years. But in terms of the manner in which champions fall, uh, in terms of the manner, it happens in different ways. Some of the players they want to just basically cut off the fall. They don't want to fall. Bjorn Borg retired really early because he didn't want to fall. But Federer is willing to fall, and the only question is just how he's going to do it. And it looks so far, and it began really. I'll go back to it. It began with the Coric match at Indian Wells. And so maybe this is an interesting bookend we have here um, with the defeat to Coric yet again, or after Halle. Of course, there was the interim match at Halle, but now the defeat to Coric for a second time at Shanghai. There is a certain tidiness to this narrative. We'll have to see what Federer can produce going forward, but possibly the fall of a champion in Federer's case, since he's willing to fall. We're going to see it. He's going to let us see his fall. And for that, we should thank him. See, Bjorn Borg was a little too wimpy to do that. Maybe wimpy. I'm not finding all the right words, but Bjorn Borg didn't have the courage to fall. Yeah, it's an interesting point about Croatia. And Croatia and Serbia and that whole area and tennis. It's a little bizarre. It's a pretty small area of the country, but Federer has the courage, and he is going to play through his fall. I hope he does. I hope he plays through his fall. I wanna watch it. It's painful, but I want to watch him play. I love watching him play, even when he's losing. So he's going to let us observe it. He has the courage to let us observe it, and he loves the game more than Bjorn Borg did. Now, there's a proposition for you. Bjorn Borg tried to make a comeback later, which was a terrible attempt. But he's going to let us watch him fall. It's going to be sad. But part of the complexion of this fall is going to involve hints of the champion. And that's what I was, I guess, misled by this week a little bit. It's going to involve strong hints, strong manifestations of the champion from time to time. And he's going to flirt with us a little bit in that way. The champion of ore is going to flirt with us, but it's very possible, and we'll just have to see what happens. I'll never stop believing until the moment Roger stops believing. And when the moment Roger stops believing is going to be the moment he retires. So I'm going to believe in Roger right up until the second he retires. But it may very well be that we're just going to see those hints of the champion. And that's what we've seen. He's had such a long career, folks. He's given so much to the game and to his fans. Again, he need not give any more, but what he may very well offer as he gives us the courageous, as he offers the fall, as he offers the Federer fall to the world, finds the courage to display his fall for the world to see. As that happens, it might be that what we have to live with is just hints. Just every now and again, we see manifestations of that magic. Every now and again, we see manifestations of that magic. And you know what? I'll take what I can get. I will take what I can get. And if thank you, Roger. Thank you for what you've given us so far. This immense career spanning almost 20 years of professional tennis. And he's not stopping, folks. He's going to show us his decline, but he's going to give us more wins too. He's going to give us more wins too. Well, I'm going to conclude with those fairly philosophical remarks. But I will say, just to give credit where credit is due, Borna Coric was virtually flawless. I saw a comment to this effect coming in, I think, from Paisley. Yes, Coric was virtually flawless. There was nothing fundamentally wrong with Federer's game today. It was just that Coric was too formidable, too redoubtable, too perfect and consistent with the first serve from the baseline in particular, and he just prevented Federer from developing the forward momentum that Federer must develop in order to win often. And Federer started to understand that later in the match, and he started to take a different approach and come in a little more. There was a bit more forward momentum, but in general, Federer just was prevented from doing what he does so well by the brilliance of Borna Coric. It's been a great pleasure to do these live streams. I'm feeling better already having talked about it, but I'm going to have to cope with this loss and kind of mourn it a little bit. I will think more about the implications and be back soon to talk with you guys. Peace be with you. Signing off from Boston. Bye-bye.